Captions test 1 2 captions test.
Good evening and welcome to the June 4th, 2024 City Council meeting. This is a regular council meeting, and the council is conducting this meeting from the City Council chamber. This meeting is being video streamed and can be viewed live or later on the city's website. As some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek Council meeting, I wanted to welcome everyone and talk briefly about the public comment process. For each agenda item, there will be an opportunity for the public to comment on the item. Thus, if you desire to speak to an item on the agenda this evening, please hold your comments until the City Council considers that item. Additionally, we have a section on the agenda titled Public Communications, for which the public communication comments are for items not on the agenda. Any comments during public communications should not relate to an item that is on the agenda this evening. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will initially be allocated for public comments, and which are items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the open session if there are people who didn't get a chance to talk during the 30-minute first time. If you desire to provide a public comment, please complete a speaker identification card and line up behind the lectern at the appropriate time. Wait your turn, and when you approach the lectern, please state your name and the city of residence for the record. You have 2 minutes to address the City Council. Please keep in mind that this is a city business meeting. The City Council has adopted rules of decorum to ensure that all meetings are conducted effectively and efficiently, and that all members of the public have a full, fair, and equal opportunity to be heard. The City Council Handbook outlines decorum expected in the City Council chamber and can be found on our website. All remarks should be addressed to the City Council. Please do not use threatening, profane, or abuse language which disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meeting. Again, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. Written comments submitted and received up to 2 hours before the meeting have been posted on the website for public review and are included in the meeting record, but will not be separately read on the record. And after all of that, let's stand up with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Now's when I read them. Okay. We have another thing to do, and I have to get the right paper out. This is part of the opening, and we're considering to take action on a request from a council member to participate in a meeting remotely due to emergency circumstances pursuant to Government Code Section 54953F1. Receive notice that a council member is participating in the meeting due to just cause circumstances pursuant to Government Code Section 54953F1. At this time, I will ask our city clerk if any notifications or requests for virtual meeting participation have been received by a member of the council.
Mayor Haskell, we have received notification from Council Member Francois to participate in the meeting remotely.
Thank you. Councilmember Francois, would you please address the council?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and colleagues. I am not feeling well this evening, and so I would ask the ability to be able to participate remotely in tonight's meeting pursuant to the Just Cause provision of the Brown Act.
Okay, and because of that, let me let you know that we are also available for Zoom comments, and the Zoom webinar ID is 884-1154 6991, and the passcode is 482724. All righty. That's the hard part. The next item on the agenda is the roll call.
Councilmember Francois,
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Councilmember Wilk.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Here.
Mayor Haskew.
Here. At this moment, then, we are excitedly looking forward to a presentation by Central Contra Costa Sanitary District. Nice, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Haskew and members of the council.
Would you lean into the mic?
Yeah. My name's Florence Weddington, and I am a longtime resident of Walnut Creek. I have lived here since 1990. I've raised 2 children here, both graduated from Northgate High School. And I am also the Division III representative for Central Contra Costa Sanitary District. And so I want to thank you on behalf of Central San for allowing us to come and give you an update on what's going on with Central San. Not sure. Sure, thank you. So Central San has been serving the county for 78 years. And, oops, I think this is this the right slide? I think you need to go back one slide. Go back a few slides. Okay, just go forward one now. Thank you. So our vision at Central San includes 3 main elements. First, we want to be an innovative industry leader in the environment, in environmental stewardship and sustainability. We want to deliver exceptional service to our customers, and we want to maintain responsible rates. Our mission is to protect both public health and the environment. Next slide. So an overview of Central San, we service a 146 square mile service area, and that includes nearly 500,000 residents and over 15,000 businesses. We maintain 1,500 miles of underground pipe, and we clean over 13 billion gallons per year of wastewater. And we are one of the few agencies in the country who has 25 years of total compliance with our NPDES permit, which is our National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. And we also produce 600 million gallons of recycled water every year. And we have crews that are inspecting, cleaning, and maintaining all of our facilities, and they're on call 24/7. Next slide, please. Our board is governed by 5 members, 5 directors, and we have staggered election year terms. I serve, as I mentioned, Division III, which represents all of Walnut Creek, including Rossmore. And of the 5 of us, 4 are up for election in November. Next slide. So this is kind of just a basic graphic of what it is that we do. We have a collection system that captures waste streams from both residential and businesses, and it transports it to our treatment plant in Martinez, and it goes through primary and secondary treatment from there before it's discharged out to the bay. Next slide. So this is an aerial photo of our treatment facility located in Martinez, California. We're right at the intersection of 680 and Highway 4. And we have over 300 acres of property that are dedicated to the treatment processes. And you can see in the far background, I can't point to it, but in the far background, you can see Sassoon Bay, and that's where we discharge our treated effluent to. Next slide. So our treatment plant includes primary, secondary treatments, as well as UV light disinfection. Next slide. We test thousands of samples every day just to make sure that our wastewater is safe to discharge to the state or to the bay. And we also support special projects that includes testing for microplastics as well as PFAS. Next slide. We also produce recycled water, which is a very valuable resource in times of drought. And we do make this recycled water available to all of the residents that are in Contra Costa County. All that's required is that you do an on-site training, and then you can, you're free to pick up recycled water at our residential fill station that is at our Martinez treatment plant. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, our collection system consists of 1,500 miles of underground pipe, and we are always inspecting, cleaning, and maintaining those pipelines, and our crews are on call 24/7. Next slide. So just for some information about Walnut Creek, we have 244 miles of sewage pipe in the city of Walnut Creek. And at our household hazardous waste collection facility, we've had, in the past 5 years, we've had over 27,000 people visit that facility. We've had almost 7,000 folks visit our residential recycled water fill station in the past 5 years. And we've had 179 appointments for Walnut Creek small businesses to dispose of hazardous waste. We've added 300 square feet of patio dining allotment to each restaurant at no additional charge. And of our employees, 54 out of 294 employees work out of our Walnut Creek Collection Systems building. And we have 20 employees overall that live in Walnut Creek. Next slide. So we are continuing with our construction, replacing aging pipes, building new infrastructure, and planning for the future. And then this is a project that we just recently completed. It was a major update on our Locust Street collection system pipeline. And it was a great example of the city coordinating with the utilities. This project was coordinated with East Bay Mud's water main replacement and the city of Walnut Creek's planned paving on Locust Street. And so we just recently completed that, and we just want to thank all of the Walnut Creek staff for planning ahead of time and working with us to help coordinate these efforts with our agency as well as the others. Next slide. And then another thing that we're really proud of is we have our maintenance access cover beautification project, and you may have seen some of these covers in Broadway Plaza as we try to put them in our highly visible areas, and then we also, as we are replacing the covers, we replace them with these beautiful ones, and they represent the beautiful things within our service area. Next slide. So we are continuing to just, with our wastewater testing, monitoring for pollutants of emergent concern. We've been monitoring for a dozen plus pathogens, including some of the ones that are listed here that I'm sure that you are familiar with. If you want to get more information about the testing that we're doing and what's going on, there's a website that's listed here on this slide. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more about our household hazardous waste collection facility. It's very popular throughout our service area in Walnut Creek. Of the almost 33,000 households, we've had almost 5,000 participants, which is about 15% of Walnut Creek residents that are utilizing that facility. Next slide. We also are very conscious of educating our public, and we like to reach out to our youngest customers, so because they're the next generation of environmental stewards. So we have some programs to help them understand what we do, but we also have our Central San Academy, which is for adults. We are about to kick off our next session, which starts June 25th. And it runs for 4 weeks, and it's an opportunity for our customers to learn more about what we do. Next slide. So I told you about all the great things that we're doing at Central San, but we do have some challenges, so I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the challenges that are coming our way with this nutrient watershed permit. Next slide, please. So first off, what are nutrients? Wastewater contains things like nitrogen and phosphorus that come from human waste, food waste, and various soaps and detergents. And while these nutrients are essential to sustain life, we do need to maintain a balance. Too many nutrients can do some harmful things. Next slide, please. So the state is currently working on new permit provisions, and they're based on an August 2022 algae bloom in the bay, which killed thousands of fish. And in the last month, the regional board issued a proposed mandate that wastewater agencies in the Bay Area reduce their nutrient loads by 40%. So while Central San is very, very concerned about nutrients, we care about the bay, and we're committed to protecting the bay and reducing the nutrients. We want to make sure that the regulations that are coming our way are based on science and not being reactive. Next slide, please. So in order for Central San to be able to meet the requirements of this new permit, proposed permit, we would have to spend $665 million. And it's kind of hard to see on the slide, but there's about 12 different projects that need to be done. And it's at a very high cost. Next slide, please. So, like I said, Central San is very, very concerned about nutrients, but we don't think a one-size-all approach that is not science-based is the best way to go. This graph here shows the different regions of the bay. There's, the lower San Francisco bays, South San Francisco Bay, Central Bay, San Pablo Bay, and Suisun Bay, which is where Central San releases its discharges to. The wastewater agencies, right now, you can see that if you look at the last line, that Suisun Bay typically has, it's less than 1% of the time that the nutrient loading in that bay is harmful to the fish that are there. And if we go ahead with these proposed projects, the change that's going to happen in the Suisun Bay is not going to have much effect. So in some of the other areas, yes, you'll see some changes, but not in Suisun Bay. Next slide, please. So here's a picture that kind of shows what the current conditions are on the left. You can see Suisun Bay up at the top of the chart where there's the arrow, Central San arrow, pointing to where we discharge to. And that dark blue color indicates that the bay is in the healthy region. As you move throughout that part of the map, you can see that it changes in different parts of the bay. If you look on the far right at what the regional board is proposing, you can see that if Central Sand complies, that area stays exactly the same. It's still in the healthy region. The other parts of the bay, there are improvements for sure, but it doesn't seem quite fair that Central Sand would have to do all of these improvements because we are going to have to pass all these costs on to our Walnut Creek residents. We estimate that the total cost to each community for all the nutrients that we outlined earlier are $665 million. I think you can go to the next slide, please. It'll be $665 million. And that would be a total cost if we just took that $665 million. It doesn't include like interest over time or inflation or anything like that. It would cost each of the households in Walnut Creek about $5,500. And that's if we issue bonds to finance and cover it over a 30-year period. So that translates to about $200 annually per household that our residents would have to pay, which is significant. And like I said, it doesn't include any inflation or cost of borrowing the money. You know, all of the agencies in the Bay Area are trying to make these improvements in the same time frame. And so you have competition. I mean, there's a lot of things that could make that costs go up. And so we're concerned. I don't know that we would be able to, you know, do this without having a big impact on our residents here. Next slide, please. So this shows this slide shows, you know, of that $665 million for our whole service area, about $27.6 billion would have to be paid for by Walnut Creek residents. Next slide, please. Okay, so here, this just applies the percentage to Central Sand customers, so that's about 24.4%. Next slide, please. So I wanted to bring this to your attention because I don't think that the public is aware of this issue, and we would like the regional board to provide time and opportunities to educate the public and receive input from the public because it does have an impact, like I said, on all of our community, but I don't think that consideration was made to the impacts of disadvantaged communities, people on fixed income, senior, or other communities. And so, you know, can the residents of the Bay Area afford to bear this financial burden? I think that's what we need to look at because this is on top of all these increases are on top of, you know, increases with all of your other utilities, telecom, gas, electric, water, internet. So prices are just going to keep going up, and it can be a burden to all of us. So we need your help. But we want to thank you, first of all, I know that the city wrote a letter to the regional board addressing this issue, so we really want to thank you. But we need as many voices as possible to be able to speak out on this issue. And there is going to be, on July 10th, the Regional Water Board is going to have a meeting at 9 a.m. Anyone can join virtually and let their voice be heard. And I think it's important that we're able to get this message out so that people know what's coming their way. So, you know, I think it's also very important too because, you know, one of the members of the regional board who has input on that is a Walnut Creek resident. And so he should be aware of the impacts that it's going to have on his community as well. So anyhow, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this, but I do thank you so much for allowing me to just give you a little update on the good things that we're doing and some of the challenges that we're facing in the future.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the council? Go.
Thank you so much, and it's so nice to see you. I hope you're enjoying the job. I think it's been about a year and a half, is that right?
Just a little over a year.
Just a little over a year.
Thank you.
I appreciate the heads up on this nutrient quality issue. Science is basically on top of mind in many arenas lately. Help me understand a little bit in the community why the water quality in Sassoon Bay, or the quality of the discharge, is so much better than it is in the rest of the bay. Is it industrial load? I'm sure it's.
So I think some of it is on how the water flows in these areas. I think there's a lot more flow through the delta than maybe some of the other parts of the bay. I should probably have, I brought some experts with me who can speak more competently on this topic.
Good evening. My name is Roger Bailey. I'm the general manager, and yes, you're indeed correct. I think the issue with nutrient is a very complex issue in terms of how does it impact all of the bay. But basically, when you look at the flow going through the bay, we do have two rivers that come together and then eventually push that water out into the Pacific. As you get further into the South Bay, it's more stagnant, so there's not a lot of movement. And so as a result, the conditions down in the South Bay, there's not a lot of flushing that is going on. So I think that we have that benefit. But I do want to say that Central Sand's position really is to do it in a more responsible way. I think the solution to removing a nutrient is to do recycled water, and that's the emphasis that we have. Instead of spending $650 million, that will not have any measurable positive impact in Sassoon Bay, we can spend that type of money to do recycled water. And when we do that, even if it doesn't make a difference to the bay, we'll have water supply to our residents. So it's a kind of win-win scenario that we're looking for.
But you have to convince the Regional Water Quality Board to do this.
Exactly, and so our conversation with the regional board is to work with us to make recycled water happen. It's a little bit more complex, but we do need their effort. They do have the power of their office to help us to advocate for good policies as it relates to recycled water, and I think that they can help us with that.
So how many sanitary agencies are causing this problem, or is it other types of water agencies that are creating this
There are
concern?
37, I think there are 37 agencies that discharge into the bay, and I want to make it clear, it is not very apparent exactly what the relationship is relative to the nutrient impact as it relates to the fish kill. It's still unknown. And so one of the big issues that all of these agencies are concerned with, collectively, it will cost us over $13 billion as a region to address this issue without the assurance that it will have the intended outcome.
Best wishes on July 20th.
Thank you.
We've been through these conversations with the Water Quality Board over various other cycles. Yeah, same Water Quality Board, right? Yeah.
Okay, first of all, there's something Florence didn't feature in her list of things that you guys provide. We found out there's an RV dump station out there, and I was like, woohoo, we scored on that one. But I recognize the problem that you guys are having with nutrients and the challenge with where your discharge is in the bay. What is the regional board upstream doing? Is like Sac Regional under the same mandates? Come on, Roger, stay up there.
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. Several years ago, Sac Regional spent almost $2 billion to do nutrient mitigation, and it is not clear if it's having the intended outcome.
Okay.
And so one of the things that we need to be careful of is not spending money and then discovering later on that the intended outcome is not guaranteed. So we want to do something different. What we want to do is to do recycled water, and even if it doesn't make a difference to the nutrients in the bay, at
least you get the water.
you're getting the water from it.
So speaking of recycled water, because I know the Rossmore folks' ears are pricking up, are you still thinking indirect potable reuse, or are you thinking use in parks? Or are you thinking both?
For us, it's all of the above. Ultimately, it depends upon the relationship that we can strike with the water agencies, because Central Sand cannot directly provide recycled water. We have to provide it to the water agencies, and then they, in turn, will provide it to the residents. So if the water agencies want to do indirect or direct potable reuse, we certainly would work with them to get there.
Are you talking with East Bay Med about the potential to use that old Shell pipeline to move water up to Rossmore, or is that still kind of on the back burner?
We did. That's a good question. And she's the right person because she has been working on it on the East Bay Mud side. But yes, we have done assessment on different alternatives to get the recycled water to communities such as Rossmore. And part of that does come down to cost of doing it. And so on the East Bay Mud side, they're concerned about the most optimal way of doing it. And it might not necessarily be the Shell pipeline.
Okay. Well, if you guys ever get to the point where you need somebody to go out there and help you shop for money, we're always willing to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My only comment is thank you for talking about this, and I think that this is not being understood by 98% of the residents in Walnut Creek right now, and they're going to have a very rude awakening if we don't get a lot of messaging out about this. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Matt, do you have any questions?
Yes, I was just going to thank Director Weddington for coming tonight and providing this very valuable information. I think you and I first met on a public art walking tour 2 years ago
Correct,
in Civic
yes.
Park, and it's so nice to see you involved at Central Sand, and we appreciate you bringing this very valuable information, and especially appreciate the science-based approach to solving problems. Wonder if maybe you can just elaborate a little bit on some of the services Central Sand provides in terms of the hazardous waste collection facility. What types of materials can residents bring to that facility?
So you can bring, I might forget some, but you can bring paints, you can bring cleaners, you can bring old medication, oil, batteries, fluorescent light bulbs, just about everything, right? Pesticides, yeah. There's a lot of things, and you bring it there, and then we make sure that it's disposed of safely. It's not, go into a landfill or down the storm drain, but disposed of in a way that's responsible.
Just don't mix
That's
it in the
great.
trunk of your car.
Yes.
One service that I wasn't aware that you provided was recycled water. So I assume you have to bring your own jugs or buckets, or how does that work?
Yes, so you would bring your own containers. People can bring, gallon containers, or people can also, you probably have seen the totes in the back of trucks. I think we have a limit of, is it 300 gallons per trip? But yeah, you just need to come in and talk to the folks there, get your initial training, get all signed up. You just do that one time, and then you can come in and get your recycled water.
Wonderful. And then finally, on the Central Sand Academy, to sign up for that, someone would just go on your website?
Yeah, I believe that's on the website. You can sign up on the website, and I think there's a limit to the number of. It's unlimited. Unlimited. So come one,
Hey.
come all.
All right. The more the merrier. All right. Thanks again for coming tonight, and nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming. It's good to see everybody's bright and shiny faces. Next on the agenda is a proclamation for Gun Violence Awareness Day. And so let me read it to you. Whereas every day more than 120 Americans are killed by gun violence and more than 200 are shot and wounded, with an average of more than 17,000 gun homicides every year. Americans are 26 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries. In an average year, 3,299 people die by guns in California, with 8 deaths per 100,000 people, a crisis that costs the state $41.9 billion each year, of which $1.1 billion is paid by the taxpayers. Cities across the nation, including Walnut Creek, are working to end the senseless violence with evidence-based solutions. Protecting public safety in the communities they serve is the highest responsibility of our elected leaders. It supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens, and it goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from people with dangerous histories. Local officials and law enforcement officers, in partnership with local violence intervention activists and resources, know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their communities safe. Gun violence prevention is more important than ever, as we see an increase in firearm homicides and non-fatal shootings, increased calls to domestic violence hotlines, and an increase in city gun violence. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the hands of people who should not have access to them, and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our families and communities safe. Now, therefore, I, Luella Haskew, Mayor of the City of Walnut Creek, on behalf of the Walnut Creek City Council, do hereby declare the day of June 7th, 2024 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And I encourage all citizens to support their local communities' efforts to prevent the tragic effects of gun violence and to honor the value of human lives. And would somebody come forth and get the petition?
Sure. So my name is Michelle Peterson, or Senate Peterson. I am the group lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And we have actually worked with some of you here. And I wanted to say a special thank you to the council for recognizing this. As you said, Mayor, gun violence takes a tragic toll on our lives and our communities daily. And having cities be aware of this and helping make citizens aware just really, we really appreciate it. And we are here not in affront of the Second Amendment at all. We are here just to raise awareness and have safety be a priority. People can own guns, and people should feel comfortable also being safe. So I just want to thank you very much. Really appreciate you.
Does anybody have comments or questions?
I would just like to thank you for the advocacy work that you do on this. This really, truly is a national problem and a tragedy. And the longer that we go on without being able to address these kind of things, the bigger the problem becomes. So thank you for the work that you've done on this and keeping councils, our council and other councils, on their toes. And do you want to talk about what the orange signifies?
Yes. So orange is the color that hunters wear to be seen. And for awareness for gun violence and the National Gun Violence Day that you were so wonderful to make a proclamation for here, we wear orange to signify those that are lost to gun violence in our country every day and every year. And when I started this work over 8 years ago now, I'm a volunteer. I have a young child. The death toll was 95 people per day, and we are now over 120 people per day. So this is an issue that's not going away, and having incredible councils like yours being aware, making people aware of this issue just is really important to us. So just thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. Kevin, Councilmember Wilk has an orange. For those that can't see it, there it is.
I was wondering about Kevin. I thought, wow, he's looking very dapper
handkerchief.
tonight.
Yes.
But I just want to say thank you guys so much for all you do. I think it's a tremendous part of the community, not only to prevent people from violence from others, but gun-assisted suicide, and keeping people
Yes.
safe from that it's something that we all get behind. So thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you for bringing up the suicide, because suicide is very impulsive, and access to a gun is. I was a firefighter. I've seen suicides. I've saved people who have overdosed. I've saved people who have tried to hang themselves, but I've never seen us be able to save someone that tried to kill themselves with a gun or killed themselves with a gun. So thank you for addressing that, because
Thank you.
we need to take care of those people as well.
Matt, do you have anything to say?
I just wanted to thank you for your advocacy efforts and the good work that you're doing. As you know, our council, thanks to your partnership, adopted a safe gun storage ordinance 2 years ago. And, I've heard that from members of the community that say, I feel like I was a responsible gun owner, but I saw that you passed that ordinance, and I went out and bought a gun locker, and I'm storing my my gun in that locker now. So we're getting the word out and messaging, and I appreciate the partnership and for you being here tonight.
Thank you.
We had a very graphic experience in our neighborhood. A young woman was shot by her former young man in the hall of her house. And it took a long time before we all could even figure out, and what do you do to support the family? And the family is not as wounded as the person that died, but certainly terribly, terribly wounded. So thank you for doing what you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And thanks for recognizing that it affects the community as well, not just the individual that was affected. So thank you. We appreciate you.
All right. Next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Do I have any, does anybody wish to pull an item?
I wish to pull item 2B and 2I.
That's two.
And I'll pull item 2E.
Okay, 2E, okay. Does anybody of the public wish to make a comment right now on anything on the consent? I see somebody coming on the consent calendar. Please step forward.
Hello, my name is Barbara Guinness. I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1996. I wanted to talk, oh, can you hear me? No? Okay. My name is Barbara Guinness. I've been a resident of Walnut Creek since 1996. I want to talk about 2I on the consent calendar. Although we all know that we're experiencing a climate change occurring at a rapid pace, some state we're even in a climate emergency. And although I commend the Public Works Department for anticipating the need for various environmental consulting services in the next 5 years, they are asking for a 600% increase in funding for these projects, which I think is very excessive. Makes one ponder as well, if that much money is needed for environmental consulting, perhaps plans being considered have some serious environmental faults. Over the previous 5 years, the Public Works Department spent approximately $500,000 on environmental consulting services. But in the 2I agenda report, they comment that they want $3 million, spread out over 5 years. So that's a six-fold increase. The questions I have: was there any detailed analysis done by the Public Works Department determining why they need 6 times as much money that they have in the past 5 years? Was there any submission of quantitative or qualitative reasons why they need 600% more money? So I'm asking council, please do not authorize the city manager to enter into the master consultant services agreements for up to $3 million. Please continue with the current policy of having staff bring individual contracts for council authorization and approve as they are required. Please do not write blank checks and let Public Works fill in the dollar amounts. If this money was coming from their personal or from anyone's personal bank account, you can bet there'd be more oversight and accountability. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you. All right. Do you want to take?
I will move to approve, or do we, A, C,
Through A,
D,
H, and J,
H,
and J.
J. And do we get to K? No, we don't get to K.
Second.
Okay. May I have a roll call vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye. All right. Next item is item,
So I've pulled the warrants, item 2B, because I had left a message about a question, but I'm thinking my question got garbled. It was a voicemail message. It's about an item on the warrants that if you, staff get the question? I think what I'll just ask is for consideration of approval of the warrants, but consideration of please get back to us. There's an item on the warrants related to PG&E, and it's a very high number. My husband, being a former PG&E employee, looked at it and said he doesn't think it's a meter usage charge. He thinks it's a construction charge that's been mischaracterized because it's so big. So if you could just get back to us on that.
yes, I will get back to you. Thank you. Okay. Do you want to move to,
I'll move item 2B on the consent calendar.
I'll second.
go ahead.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Next.
And I pulled item 2I in order to ask staff some questions because I reread based on the comments from the public, and I think there was some misinterpretation on the public's part as to what was really happening, so I wanted some clarification if possible.
Good evening, Heather Ballinger, Public Works Director. Do you want to ask a specific question?
I
or-
do. First of all, are we actually allocating this as a budget, or are we just basically creating the master agreements against which we could bill if we budget it?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
So every 5 years, we go out and we do what we call master consulting services agreements. We ask for qualifications from consultants, and we go through a rigorous process to review the consultants, interview them, and so we choose, and that's in this staff report tonight, we're recommending 6 consultants that we would use, and they were basically on-call agreements, but we put a dollar amount to them. So, but it's just a placeholder. We are not asking for that allocation at all. We would come to you with a task order or a specific project. So, but we need to put a dollar amount to each of the consulting services agreements.
So did we do this 5 years ago?
We have done master agreements, but our purchasing policy has changed slightly, and so it's become a little more rigorous for us. And so we've asked, we're trying to be more transparent and go through the process slightly differently. But
And what would be the average size of these contracts? Because it looks like $500,000 might be the average size, and that's really the cap amount across all of these entities, but it could be $20,000 times
yeah,
5 different projects?
exactly. They totally range. It could be 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. It ranges depending on the project, the scope of work. So the 100,000 is the cap, and it would also be a cumulative cap.
And some of these are for operating budget purposes, and others, most significantly, because these are environmental, might be in the capital budget.
For both. Mostly the capital budget, though.
And this question might actually go to the city manager. Currently, or to the finance director, or anybody who wants to jump in. Currently, our purchasing policy, $100,000 for a formal quote. So if there was going to be any of these, if it was if the project was likely to exceed $100,000, then these would be having to compete for the project.
No.
No?
No,
They've
the
competed
500,000
already.
is now approved, and so,
Okay.
but generally, if it's a big project like that, it will be in front of you for a different reason. But the consulting services, the environmental piece, is allowed up to the 500.
And so, but the other caveat is that it has to come to us. If we didn't do this, our threshold is 125,000 for it to come to council. It's not, we don't approve a contract for $10,000.
That's right.
And what is the type of work that these environmental services consultants may be required to do that would have necessitated you to actually create this larger scope of possibility?
Well, they do environmental documents for us, so if we're doing a project, if we're in the beginning stages of starting design for a project, they'll do the whole environmental. They do environmental assessment, they do quality checks, such as if there's toxics or that kind of thing that we need testing, but mostly environmental documents.
So, and by environmental, give me an example of where we might, like the South Main Bridge, or will there be environmental
Yes.
work there?
Good example. The
Boundary
OBAG
Golf
money that we
Course.
just got, that we're doing a big project, on Mount Diab, or Newell and California, or sorry, Newell and Broadway. We'll need an environmental consultant to do the whole environmental document
So
for
this
us.
really reflects the level of capital work as well as operating work that we foresee in the next 5 years.
Right. So they'll do CEQA, NEPA, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember, if I could just add a few comments just more generally about the updated purchasing policy. And what you're seeing is these are some of the first new master service agreements to come through under the new purchasing policy, which is why it seems a little different. But, looking at the policy more generally, it's really about trying to balance competition, allowing people to compete for the services, transparency, obviously bringing this forward to council to authorize the amounts, accountability, that we have sufficient task orders in place that lay out the expectations and contracts for the work that would be done, and we hold those vendors to those standards. And then also efficiency, that we can enter into contracts a little more quickly with these folks, but through this master service agreement and get the work done. So it's really a balancing act of those four variables.
And we've done rigorous, competitive.
Yes.
This selection process there were probably many more that competed for the opportunity.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Are we ready to take this one under?
Mayor, I just had
Oh,
two
sorry.
questions.
Matt,
No
I
problem.
apologize. I was absolutely not going to forget you, and then I did.
And thank you, Director Ballinger. Can you just elaborate too on the point about any project that's funded through these environmental consulting agreements would essentially be budgeted for in our capital budget? So it's the council ultimately approves that, right, in the capital improvement plan?
Exactly. And so it would be budgeted either in our capital budget or in our operating budget.
So there's council oversight there, and then just responding to Ms. Guinness's comment about, the six-fold increase.
Yeah, and it's really not a six-fold increase because it's $500,000 for each consultant, but we're not planning on spending that for each consultant. Like I said earlier, it's like a placeholder, if you will, or an account that it's just a set aside, and then it's just so that it gives us flexibility.
So it's a cap, and essentially it could be used for one consultant, or 500 or 600,000 for one consultant, or spread out among all six of them. But you're not anticipating that it'll exceed that cap. It won't be 6 times 600,000.
Right, right. And one consultant would not exceed the cap either, so we'll stay within 500,000 for one consultant. But to be honest, most environmental documents that we do not require $500,000. That would be a large consulting services agreement for environmental, so it'd probably be a cumulative over time, and then it is for 5 years.
I do want to just clarify one point, if I may, Mayor. So it is up to $500,000 for each, and as Director Ballinger noted, it likely would not be used for all $500,000, but you are authorizing up to $3 million to be spent through this master service agreement should they be fully maximized. So I want to be clear about that point on the record. And then secondly, to your point about the budget, just to add further assurance, the council adopted the capital improvement budget, and anything that has already been approved has been budgeted for, we could proceed. If there are other projects that are not budgeted that come up that exceed my signature authority of $124,999, meaning $125,000 or more, would go to your council for approval if it's a project that has not been previously approved via the budget.
So I move item 2I and really thank staff for finding these ways to be efficient and cost-effective.
And I love efficient contracting, so I will second this.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye,
Motion carries unanimously.
fine.
And then I pulled 2E, excuse me, 2E, which was the adoption of the resolution declaring the month of June 2024 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month. And we have flown the rainbow flag on Friday afternoon. We had Councilmember Silva, Mayor Pro Tem Darling, and myself, along with several members from staff and another 8 to 10 members of the public, come to watch us raise the pride flag for, I believe, the fourth year? I've lost track. It's at least 4. So I want 6 years. That's what I thought it was. Okay, for 6 years. I certainly am proud of the council for doing this. I'm proud of the community for being involved in this. And I'm proud that we led the way in the county for really, I think virtually every city in the county now does this, and we were among the first. So just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you to everybody for your involvement. And with that, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye,
Motion carries unanimously.
great. Our next item is public communications. Under this part of the meeting, it's reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the council cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Consistent with Section 9.5 of the City Council Handbook, 30 minutes will be allocated at this time for public communications for items not on the agenda. Additional time for public communications for items not on the agenda will be provided at the end of the meeting if necessary, and I have more to read. I would like to remind the public, if you would like to provide a public comment, speaker identification cards need to be completed and turned into the city clerk. You have 2 minutes. Please keep in mind, this is a city business meeting. The city council has adopted rules of decorum to ensure the meetings are conducted efficiently and effectively, and that all members of the public have a full, fair, and equal opportunity to be heard. The City Council Handbook outlines decorum expected at council chamber and can be found on our website. All remarks should be addressed to the council. Please do not use threatening, profane, abusive language which disrupts, disturbs, and otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the council meeting. And that's it. Does anybody want to come for public comments? Yes, please come forward.
My name's Jerry Bear. I'm a Walnut Creek resident. And I applaud you for what you did with the gun group. But I have a question. Is there a way that the city council or the city of Walnut Creek can establish either a law or a regulation that anyone under the age of 18 that buys a gun has to have at least 5 hours of practice of how to use it? Because what's happening in a lot of the cases, people get guns, have no idea how to use a gun. They just buy it and get a license. I'm very old. When I started driving, they were using horses and carriages. But I still had to learn how to use a whip. The truth is, kids don't think about it. And someone will say to his buddy, hey, get a gun. You're old enough, you can go there. All you need is $500 or $1,500 to get a good gun. And to me, it makes sense if the city says something and the police department can work hand in hand with this in working out some kind of a program where if you're 18 or under, you have to spend 5 hours or 2 hours, whatever it takes, to learn how to use the darn thing. It's just an idea. I thought maybe you could play with it. Thank you.
Thank you. We needed a new toy. Now.
My name is Barbara Gannis, resident since 1996. I talked on 2I, which is all I was going to talk about, and thanks for discussing it. I still got my issues, but anyway, it's fine. And I just want to make a comment about last night's pros meeting. I wasn't able to attend, but apparently at the end of the meeting, there was an announcement that the flow trail is being canceled. I don't know if you heard that or not, but I just wanted to make a comment. I know it might make a lot of you extremely happy because you won't hear from me as much about it, but I just wanted to thank everyone that might have been involved in helping get that project canceled. So thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, there are no hands raised on Zoom for the public comments.
That's correct.
Thank you. All right, then we're closing the public comment session, and we're moving on to council member and staff announcements, reports on activities or requests. Are there any closed session announcements?
Madam Mayor, the council did conduct the city manager's evaluation this evening, and I would turn that over to you.
Okay. I will do that when it comes to be my turn, if that's okay. Great. Okay, city manager.
Yeah, just wanted to do basically a public service announcement with the Crowell fire that had occurred near Tracy recently and has burned at the time over 14,000 acres. Just a reminder to everybody that fire season is upon us, which will only worsen throughout the year. And I'd like to encourage folks to sign up for emergency alerts and to stay informed and receive evacuation orders. The alerts are one of the best ways to do that in addition to social media and others. This is actually better than social media because you can get the information directly through the alerts. Please visit, if you are interested, the city's website at walnutcreekca.org/emergency. If you want to go more specifically, you can also just get there through the website at walnutcreekca.org. And you can, through there, you can sign up for WC Alert, and you can also sign up for the Contra Costa County Community Warning System. So I would encourage folks to sign up for both of those, as both the county and the city may put out information depending upon the nature of the emergency. This is also as easy as texting 888-777 to be registered for WC Alert. So again, please visit our website and sign up for these emergency alerts if you're not already receiving them. And that's my update, Mayor.
Thank you. I usually pick on Matt, but I'm going to save you for the second to last and start with Kevin. Kevin, would you please do it?
Sure. I think a few people were with me at some of the different events. We had, of course, a wonderful annual Memorial Day ceremony at Civic Park. We had a couple of hundred people that came out for that. The entire city council was there. I love the idea, and I heard from other people about they really enjoyed the fact that we read the letters from people that were talking about family members that that were veterans, and in some cases they unfortunately died during the war. So it was a terrific again ceremony. Thank you for being the MC on that one. I was also at Collab, which opened up. We had the ribbon cutting for there. I think, again, most of the council members were there at that one. This is a fertility clinic that's in the Shadelands area, and great to have them as part of Walnut Creek. Ribbon cutting is about the most favorite thing that I think any of the people on the council do, because everybody's happy, and people are just happy part of Walnut Creek. Along with that was another grand opening for Chips. For those of us who live in the Northgate area and the east side of town, like myself, this is a great new dessert place that we again had a ribbon cutting and had their grand opening. So there's a lot of businesses that are opening up in Walnut Creek, not just in downtown, which gets the lion's share of the PR, but all throughout Walnut Creek as well. And then along with Mayor Pro Tem Darling, I participated in the Clayton Pride Parade, which was on, now I'm forgetting, it was Sunday, right? Sunday, all right. And we represented Walnut Creek there, a tremendous amount of people, must have been a couple of thousand people that were out for that. And again, just great to see people that, just happy to be out. It's so nice after some of the things that we do where people are just happy in some of these areas. One of those happy places was the Art and Wine Festival. See, I get to talk about all this because you picked on me first. But Art and Wine Festival, what a great annual event. The Chamber of Commerce runs this. We had thousands of people. I don't even know what the number was. We'll have to get that number from the Chamber of Commerce in the weeks to come. Thousands of people were there. I volunteered for one of the shifts. And again, people are just thrilled to be out, enjoying it was great weather, enjoying the experience, music, food. There were games there. There's rides and wine and beer and art. So again, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce. And if you missed it this year, it's the last year for a while that it's going to be in Heather Farm, because with the construction of the Aquatic Center next year and the Community Center, it's going to be downtown next year. And if you missed it, do not miss next year. That's my update.
Girl, happy news. Please move on.
Thank you very much. I'd like to build on a couple of things. In terms of Memorial Day, I really want to give a shout out to staff for the work of that. It was very difficult to find families and friends of those who died in service of their country in a time of war. And so it may be a one-off because it is so difficult to find that. So thank you to staff for doing that, and for members of the public for contributing their stories. At the Recycle Smart board meeting in May, we took 3 important actions. Walnut Creek is one of 6 agencies that are on the Recycle Smart, which handles the garbage, recycling, and organic services for La Marinda, Danville, Walnut Creek, and the unincorporated county areas. At our May meeting, we celebrated with 2 high school students their work locally at their high schools regarding recycling. And we also adopted our 2024-2025 annual budget, which the fiscal year starts July 1. And we took unanimously, the board voted to take an opposed position to the initiative that is proposed for the November ballot called, well, euphemistically called the Taxpayer Deception Act, but basically it would impact garbage rates as well as all sorts of other fees and charges across the community. I was very pleased to be able to attend one of the opening night productions of Cabaret at the Lesher Center of the Arts, which is playing now until June 23rd. If you don't have a ticket, you should get one. Not only is it a fabulous production, it is very thought-provoking and timely. If you can realize that Cabaret is musical by Kander and Ebb that takes place in the 1930s Germany. And there's a lot of interesting messaging. There were a couple of fabulous numbers in which I couldn't figure out if it was really appropriate to clap because the message of the song was not one you would be wanting to clap about. So you had to think about it. So get tickets at LesherArtsCenter.org. Thanks to all of us for participating in Art and Wine. The Chamber's here this evening. If you can tell us how many glasses we went through when you come for your subsequent presentation. I know somebody was counting them, and I ended up getting all the way home with an extra drink ticket. I couldn't figure out how I did that. It's probably a good thing. Today I participated in a statewide briefing on legislation and the state budget, and at this point the state legislature is very intent on adopting the statewide budget by the end of June, or they don't get paid. Aw, shucks. The budget was started in January at about $291.5 billion, and it's now down to $288 billion with a gap of 27 to 30 billion each of the next 2 years, which is a lot better than where it started. But the closing of the budget gap is really includes some deferrals, reductions, and eliminations. And one of those eliminations I really wanted to point out, because we rely on these funds, and those are the HAP funds for homeless and housing services, and we need to be talking to our legislators about not losing those funds. The legislative joint budget proposal does keep the $1 billion in HAP funds for the sixth year round, but does not keep the $300 million in grant funding. And so if we're relying on some of those funds, we may be at risk. So if we can reach out, send letters, send cards, skywrite, whatever, that would be very important. And then finally, and we will celebrate this and honor this individual, our former mayor, Charlie Abrams, passed away last evening. And he had been battling leukemia for a while. And we are all sorry that he will no longer be part of our community and part of our former mayor's events and celebrations. He will be greatly missed. He was a traffic engineer. He counted cars for a living. And he was on our planning commission. He was on the city council for 12 years. And we will honor him at some time subsequently. The news is rather fresh and just being distributed. Thank you very much, Mayor.
And Charlie also sat in one of the front pews at St. John Vianney with us and our kids behind him, irritating him. But he was always very gracious about that. Janet loved it. His wife was like all over my kids. Memorial Day was really a great event. I think having it not be a bunch of politicians talking, but using the voices of the people who have lost people was very powerful. It's witnessed by the fact that I could not read my whole thing without stopping for a second and breathing for a minute. We did raise the pride flag. That was a lot of fun. It was the first time I got to actually be here. I'm usually out somewhere on vacation. The Clayton Pride Parade was really a lot of fun. It's very family friendly. The organizers give you very clear instruction that this is for families and there's nothing. And so I was in between my cousin Margaret's Taekwondo troupe with their Chinese dragon, and the Rossmore LGBTQ convertible was behind me, and I got to ride Tiffany Plato, one of the local business owners out there. She runs a restaurant out there. She had this beautiful yellow convertible I got to ride in, and it was quite fun. Art and Wine was okay. It was hot, and nobody cheered for me, but I sold a lot of drinks, so that was good. The collab bash was awesome. If anybody's interested, Dahlia Segal, the doctor who has organized this, is a powerhouse. She will give anybody who wants a tour. One of the things that she talked about at the bash was her efforts to work with patients undergoing cancer treatment. So if somebody is starting cancer treatment, she has funding that she's worked to get from a couple of different nonprofits so that people can go through egg or sperm retrieval in advance of the treatment so that they could protect their fertility, which is just she's an amazing person. I also got to sit down with Luz Gomez, our new East Bay Mud director. She came here to speak to us recently, and she and I set up coffee, and it was really a lot of fun to talk about water with somebody, and so that was really great fun. The DRAA business leaders, you can probably speak on that, but the three of us were there. Were you? Anyway. But Miss Monet, one of the performers that grew up in Pittsburgh, came back and sang, and she's just a true delight. On the fire side of things, the other thing, in addition to making sure that you have your emergency notifications on, is fire safe your house. Pull your weeds. If you have a fence and you're backing up to the open space, make sure you have that defensible space beside your fence. I have several friends who needed to go through tremendous modifications of their houses to keep their housing insurance this year. People are getting canceled left and right. So the more we do as a community. One friend of mine had to go replace her gates on both sides because they were wooden gates attached to the house. And I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, your house isn't going to burn, but everybody around you is down. So that's an important thing to look at this time of year. And then the last thing, I got to go last night with a couple friends of mine who are volunteering in the open space over at Sugarloaf. And there is I did not even know this was there. They told me to meet them at the native plant garden. I'm like, what the heck is that? And it's a little native plant garden in Sugarloaf, and the three of them maintain it. They have the plants labeled. There was soapwort was the last plant that was really blooming, and they shared with me that the flowers open up as the sun goes down, and all the bees come over and enjoy it. So that was one of those little unexpected gems of the open space, and we will all be Thursday night at the Shadelands and Saturday to start celebrating the 50th anniversary. Lots of fun things coming up with that to celebrate our open space. So that's my...
I am not going to forget you, Matt. You're on now.
Hey, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, colleagues, for all that you do for our community. I, along with Councilmember Silva, attended the Recycle Smart meeting. I couldn't find really anything on my list that she hadn't already covered, although I will point out and sort of challenge our Northgate and Los Lomas students that Recycle Smart does offer scholarships for college-bound students. And this year, the scholarships went to a student from Monte Vista and Campos. So it'd be nice to get you in the mix if you're in the environmental clubs at either of those schools and have undertaken some programs or initiatives, you would be eligible. So please go to the website and look for more information about that. There was also a highlight in our executive director's report about a pilot program Walnut Creek is conducting on sustainable business highlight program. And perhaps we could have one of those businesses highlighted at one of our future meetings so we can talk about the good work that's happening right here in Walnut Creek. I echo the comments on Memorial Day. Mayor, I thought you did a terrific job, and I especially appreciate all the hard work that Betsy Burkhardt and Matt Bollender put into making that such a successful event. It was very moving to read letters from family members who had lost a loved one in service to our country. And I was privileged to do that. I know that we all were, and I will remember that for a long time. So thank you for that opportunity. I did attend the Economic Development Working Group of the Chamber. We had a conversation about the Diablo Valley Data the Diablo Valley Data Project, which is an effort undertaken by folks at DVC to attract high-tech companies using a data-driven approach. So they're trying to combine data about where people work, who lives in Contra Costa, how we can match up the employers with the employees and make our region more attractive from a tech standpoint, biotech, autonomous vehicles, drone technology, medical devices. One of the suggestions that was raised at the meeting was from the owners and operators of the Shadelands, the Ultimate Fieldhouse, and the COPA training facility, which is a specialized training facility for soccer players and uses a lot of technology to gather information that they can share with that group. We also talked about gathering information from the city and various other cities in the region about permitting timeframes so that we can understand what's the current baseline and how we might be able to improve on that. And then on the agenda in the future is preparation of a technical advisory panel with the Urban Land Institute, which would kind of be a symposium focused on expanding likely focused on expanding healthcare opportunities in Walnut Creek and the region. And that is my update.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, that leaves me, and about the only thing I wasn't with everybody with was a CalCog Legislative Day, because I do that as a result of my being on the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Commission, and so we learned a lot about, we were up in Sacramento and we had lots of different state people coming in and talking to us about the items and how frustrating it is to deal with the budget and how they basically got broadsided by the fact that because we couldn't file tax returns until October, they never were really sure what the money was to be budgeted for. So they just assumed that the same windfall that had happened the year prior was going to continue, and boy, were they wrong. So we got that, and lots of other things. They gave us an update on housing, the Housing Association, and I've let Erica know about that, and that's it. Sadly, I was scheduled to be at the farmers market on Sunday, and a terrible, tragic accident happened there. And as much as it's an effort for me to get there, I would have much rather been at the farmers market at full bore than having to deal with the fact that 2 of the workers there were seriously injured, and I'm sure are still in the hospital. And all of the people who rely on the money from the farmers market had to skip town, and not skip town, that's a bad choice of words, but they didn't get to sell their wares, and so that was a really sad time for me, and they and everyone around. The DRAA celebration that Mayor Pro Tem talked about was a celebration of the business support community and the business community and how much it has supported the arts in Walnut Creek and how they make so much of our growth toward our strategic plan be in action. And so it was really nice to be able to thank the people who made helped us make such strides in bringing the theater up to the extraordinary quality level that we have now. They also reminded that the biggest fundraiser for that on Broadway will be in October, so plan on having your fancy duds and showing up for a really good time. And my last item had a coming attraction from the city attorney, and that was during our closed session, we had our city manager annual evaluation, and the city council is very pleased, and we shared that news with him, with his service as the city manager, and we look forward to continuing to work with him. And even though we think you're nearly perfect now, watching you grow to getting even more nearly perfect. So thank you for all the work you do, Dan. And that, I think, takes us to the next item on the agenda. So that will be, turning the page, the approval of the assessment report and annual levy of assessments for Walnut Creek Tourist Business Approval District for fiscal year 24-25, and setting a public hearing. Hi. Please start.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Angela Sway, Economic Development Manager. Tonight's item 5A is the annual T-bid renewal. To briefly recap, the city established the Walnut Creek Tourism Business Improvement District, which is the T-bid, in 2010. The purpose is to promote tourism within Walnut Creek by funding activities through a levy of assessments through the hotels. The assessment is 3% of the guest room rate on all occupied rooms. The T-bid is managed by the Chamber of Commerce and Visit Walnut Creek DMO as a contract by the city. And the annual T-bid assessment renewal is a two-step process. Tonight's meeting is the first meeting with a presentation from Visit Walnut Creek and the Chamber. And the second meeting is the public hearing scheduled for June 18th. This morning, the city clerk's office provided you with an addendum to the assessment report, which included a proposed amendment to the fiscal year 2023-24 budget. And that adjustment included some line items, adjustments to the overhead costs, additional trade shows, event support, and personnel changes. Also included was a revision to the profit and loss statement and balance sheet, and that was some cleanup done to accurately reflect net assessment revenue, so to no longer record the city's administration fee as an expense. At this time, I'd like to introduce Nicole Hankton and Bob Linscheid to give a presentation and to answer council's questions. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening, everyone. We all made it through the Art and Wine Festival. I'm still a little sore. I hope you're okay. All right, get started. So, starting right out of the gate on, is that better? Okay. Starting right out of the gate with our partnerships. We have partnerships going on with local community partners, Ultimate Fieldhouse, where our hotels are the exclusive lodging partners for all of the tournaments and events that come through Ultimate Fieldhouse. It's not only basketball tournaments that we found. We were also able to host an expo for the half marathon that was to happen in March. So we've been partnering with them very well, and on their website, only the Walnut Creek hotels are listed for tournament attendees and organizers. We also have a relationship with St. Mary's College for visiting teams, and we also get a lot of visual marketing at all of the games at St. Mary's. So we'll be continuing some of those partnerships. Next up is our conferences, where we really get a lot of exposure to meeting planners who are procured by the conference organizers who will book in destinations of our size. We try to primarily focus on those particular conferences that book planners that procure events anywhere from 50 to 300 attendees, because that makes more sense for us. We were also able to, in this last fiscal year, gain a basketball tournament that happened on April 14th through 16th. Hotel occupancy for that weekend was 85% plus. And we were also able to procure corporate events. We have also started a data platform called Noland that allows us to track programs that are booked in Walnut Creek. So one of the challenges that we were facing is we were going out on the road and we were meeting with these event and meeting planners, talking to them about Walnut Creek, sending leads over to the hotels, and then it disappeared. We didn't hear anything else. We didn't know if they booked or not. Nolan is a data platform that allows us to go back and see if those events were booked. It allows us to track, and it also allows us to check out events that are of the size that would be conducive to Walnut Creek, and we can also go grab those as well. So Andressa and I are very excited about Noland. Sponsorships and also memberships that we're continuing. One of them, very important, is Cal SAE. So we are sponsor of their annual events Elevate and Seasonal Spectacular. 70% of the members are event and conference planners, primarily association planners, which is not a market that we could play in before, because association meetings used to be huge and we just couldn't accommodate them. But COVID happened, and they shrunk those sizes down and they do the meetings regionally now. And now we can play in the association market, which the hotels are really happy about. New Visitors Guide, great piece of marketing. This is the 2024 version. We print 10,000 copies. Everyone has a copy. 4,000 go to the Oakland Airport. 4,500 are distributed to Visit California Welcome Centers in San Francisco, Modesto, and Fairfield. And we also regularly distribute them to folks that request them through our listing with Visit California. And then we also have remainders of copies that we distribute through Walnut Creek Downtown. We have some out in the lobby, and also chamber members sometimes request them, such as real estate agents, people with short-term rentals. So it's been a great piece of marketing for Walnut Creek. More marketing collateral that you also have samples of. Leisure Travel Guide. These are for our tour operators. We attend shows like IPW and Go West. We primarily speak to tour operators who specifically want to know what are the key points, what are cool things that we can do in Walnut Creek, the top things that we can do to hang out, how many days do we need to spend there. When we fly into LAX and then we drive up to Yosemite, can we stop in Walnut Creek on our way to to Napa. Self-guided procured driving tours are very, very popular, especially with the UK and China. They're flying into LAX, they're renting a car, and they're using a procured tour, and they're driving through California to experience the local activities that we all participate in, and they want to participate in as well. So we're trying to get Walnut Creek as a stop on those tours. We have a meeting planner's guide that we are very proud of. We just launched it in April of this year. It's everything you need to know about booking a meeting in Walnut Creek. Our hotels, how much space they have, other venues that you can book meetings, because the big call for action right now is unique venues, anything with natural light, and we do have that here in Walnut Creek. So there's also an online version with a button for planners to submit a request for proposal. So we rolled that out, and you also have copies of that. More marketing collateral. We are part of an app called Wander Maps. It's customized, very cool things to do in different destinations. So if you're traveling, I recommend you check out Wander. You can enter in the destination in which you're traveling, and it will highlight things in that destination for you, things for you to do. So what we did was we patterned our Wander map after our visitor's guide and actually after our cocktail trail as well. And coming up, we're going to be adding hiking trails on Mount Diablo and also biking trails, because we've learned that that's very popular on Wander maps and people are looking for that. Jumping into digital, this is a whole lot of gobbledygook, so I am going to do highlights. The website engagements have increased, and this was driven primarily by the Google ads that we submitted for groups and celebrations. Basically being the same, I believe, audience, especially if there's any group rooms that are booked. We also added a new venue this fiscal year, the Garden, which has been getting a substantial amount of traffic. People love that venue. And both segments performed better than they did in our last quarter. Our leisure campaign generated 71% of the total campaign clicks, so people are coming to Walnut Creek primarily for leisure, and that was 49% of our digital spend. Out of the 4 campaigns, Celebrations campaign had the best click rate. So people are coming, Celebrations encompasses weddings, birthdays, baby showers, we didn't specifically book weddings, we went more after celebrations, and it's paying off. And groups drove most of the engagements on our website. I'm going to just give highlights on this. Total click outs to venue partner sites. So Ruth Bancroft Garden, The Garden, we have a lot of gardens, Leisure Center, that's what we consider venue partner sites. They did really well, over 1,400 click outs. And then our hotels did very well as well, clicking out to the hotel partner sites. I realize that there's a lot less clicking out to the hotels, but people tend to research hotels on their own. It's not really something that they click out from a destination website, but the hotels are seeing traffic coming from the Visit Walnut Creek website. So the highlights for this one, there were over 2,600 website engagements just in Q4 of the fiscal year, with an additional 12 from Unique Venues. I just want to highlight Unique Venues a little bit. It is a very inexpensive platform that we're using that connects with event planners that are looking just for that, Unique Venues. And Walnut Creek does very well. We get, leads were up 26 last quarter to 48, and this is a small, like I said, independent platform, but we've been very popular on it, and we've gotten over 1,400 engagements from Unique Venues. So we're very happy with that so far. Another piece on our website is website visitor origination. The top 5 states, California, obviously, Washington, Kansas, Oregon, and Texas. And we noticed Kansas, Coffeyville, Kansas, I don't know where that is. but we figured out that there was a little glitch with our Microsoft ads, which is why Coffeyville, Kansas kept popping up in our engagement results, but we have since fixed that. So the next time I present, we will have, there won't be any anomalies popping up. But we do, and I think I presented this last year, we are seeing more growth in visitors from Texas. And I think that may have something to do with a lot of Californians moving to Texas. We're continuing our Mount Diablo co-op, which means that we partner with Visit Concord, Stay Pleasant Hill, Visit Tri-Valley, and us, and we pool our money, and we get to be a part of these huge marketing buys that, the digital marketing buys that SF Travel puts out. And we decided to go through with that again last fiscal, and total rooms generated from the 5 days in Mount Diablo region just for Walnut Creek were 1,039 rooms generated just from this campaign, and over $215,000 in room revenue generated. So, and it's all leisure. So we did really well with that. So if we have another opportunity to do this in the next fiscal, we will likely go in, and that is a $5,000 buy each time that we participated, which was twice. So we spent $10,000 and got over $215,000 in room revenue. So this is a good one. We're excited about it. We also started some geofencing ads, very super targeted, creepy Big Brother ads that I enjoy. So we did it for our cocktail trail. We target visitors that are going into restaurants in Lafayette, Danville, and other surrounding areas as they're browsing on their phone. Walnut Creek ads pop up, and we're directing them to come to our cocktail trail. These ads have been performing very well, especially on Facebook. It popped up on Costco. I was looking at Costco the other day, and I wasn't too far, and a Walnut Creek ad popped up, so I was very happy about that. So we are also starting to target college sports enthusiasts so that we can get those rooms booked in the area for folks visiting St. Mary's and even some UC Berkeley. Digital ads in the international market. We stepped into that this last fiscal year, and we did not do too bad our first time out. We targeted the UK from August 2023 to December 2023. We targeted, our ads are on Kayak, Momunda, and Opodo. These are European online travel agencies, and as you know, Kayak is also in the US. And we got over 3 million impressions, and we got just over 12,000 clicks. 0.42%, not bad for our first time dabbling in this market. We're going to try it again, and we're going to pump things up just a little bit with our creative, and hopefully we'll get better click-throughs this time. But it was good for our first time out in the UK. We're also exploring ads in China, but it's a little bit more complicated to do that. So we're exploring that opportunity, and then also exploring partnering with Visit California to tag on to some of their campaigns in China, since we had a China FAM this past fiscal, and it was very popular. That should stay strategic plan instead of report. So we completed our strategic plan this year. The plan goes from 2024 through 2027. This was an amazing experience. This is my first time with a DMO going through the strategic plan process. And it was great. We brought in stakeholders from all over Walnut Creek, the hotels, downtown, folks from the city, and everyone gave input, and the agency that we worked with pulled it all together, and we established our top 4 strategic goals. Increase interest and visitation to Walnut Creek, of course, direct room night growth, enhance community engagement, advocacy, and partnerships, and foster a sustainable, accountable, dynamic organization. And then below those goals, we broke it out even further. It gets more detailed, and then it gets even more detailed where myself and our team, we have goals per quarter that we need to accomplish that are laid out in the strategic plan. So we're super excited to get started on this, and we think you'll see results. Just to go through some highlights for this last fiscal, we had China tour operators for our fam. They loved Walnut Creek. The feedback that we constantly received was that Walnut Creek was beautiful, Walnut Creek was fancy, and Walnut Creek felt safe. Safe came up over and over and over again. So thanks to all the efforts by City Council and our law enforcement to make our visitors feel that way. I was shuttling them through Walnut Creek, and we were driving through downtown, and they said, "Stop, let us out. We want to walk." So I said, "Okay, great." And I just patiently waited at the hotel for them to come back, but they had a great time. We attached a familiarization tour to the East Bay Women's Conference. So we invited 9 meeting planners to come out, and we treated them and we wined and dined them. We did site tours with our hotels, and they got to see the space at the Leisure Center, which most of them were totally unaware existed. And we talk about it on the road all the time, but we find that the impact it has when they actually see it is way better than us talking about it at conferences. All of you heard about the half marathon Revel Way series. We also brought that to Walnut Creek through one of our conferences. It did not happen, but it was a great experience, and economic impact report out of it, despite the marathon being canceled by Mount Diablo. Another highlight is more sponsorships with Walnut Creek Downtown. It's been an amazing partnership with them and the Chamber of Commerce. And we leveled our staff back up to pre-COVID levels, so I don't have to be on the road as much anymore, which is amazing. So we have 3 of us now. Myself, Andressa, is our sales and marketing manager, and we have Chris, who we share with the Chamber of Commerce for our marketing and communications manager. Now, this is the economic impact report that I mentioned about the half marathon. So, although it did not happen, our team, I'm very proud of our team. We jumped in. Chris designed that graphic that you see. We had a booth at the expo the day prior to the race, and we played Plinko, and we got people to take the survey and give all of their economic information. Where did you book your room? How many rooms did you book? What was the rate? How much did you get a rental car? How much did you spend? Do you plan on doing some shopping? And we worked with the Sports Economic LLC to conduct this survey. They crunched the numbers for us. And even though the marathon was canceled, we were able to collect over 220 responses for the survey, which they only needed 100 for a baseline, and we collected over 220. You'll see lodging came in at over $86,000. Now that includes hotels and short-term rentals. Rental cars are up there, transportation, obviously airfare, et cetera. Shopping, over 80,000. Food and beverage is the highest. It came in at over $116,000. Entertainment, things that they did while they were in town, either before or after the marathon. And then miscellaneous could have been anything from, buying gear, purchasing things that they needed for the marathon, medicines, you never know. So then there's business spending, because Revel also spent money in Walnut Creek. So bottom line is the total economic impact for Walnut Creek was over $784,000. And that was one event. But keep in mind, we're small. So that half marathon was a citywide for us because we only have 5 hotels. So incredible. And it was about 1,100 people that came, runners, and over 850 of them were from outside of Walnut Creek. I think we saw someone that was from Ecuador who came to the race. Revel has a very strong national and international following, so we are working with them again, and this time we're doing it in June. So hopefully there will be no cancellation. And that is it. I also have a little bit more to give you. I was asked about total rooms for the hotels altogether, and I do have those numbers. Total rooms booked and consumed in 2022 for all of our 5 hotels, 250,241, and in 2023, $245,695. There's a little bit of a difference there because San Ramon was under renovation in 2023, and we reaped the benefits from that, especially the Marriott. So there's a little bit of a difference there. Does anyone have any questions?
So those are room nights, not
Correct.
room dollars.
Those are room nights, rooms booked and consumed,
Thank you.
yes.
Okay. Is that you're ready for the questions?
I'm ready for the questions.
Okay, let me check and see if there are any. Are there any questions? I will start with Councilmember Cindy Silva.
Thank you very much for the report. It's always exciting to hear about this, and this is year 14. I'm looking back at how long this has been around. So are the hoteliers really came together on this because they wanted to find a way to pool their resources? Well, it turns out to be they charge the customer for the additional resources, but pool their resources to be able to increase room nights and room rates, because the more room nights, then the ability to increase the lodging rate goes up. How are they feeling about it? And thank you for the information on the difference between 2022-23 and 2023-24, which is where we are now.
Yeah, we won't have 2024 would be forecasted, yeah, but
So how are they feeling about the results of all of this work?
you know, what I hear from them in the board meeting is they really appreciate and are enthusiastic about the support that we provide. Of course, they love the leads, they love the RFPs, and I think they understand that they need the promotion. You know, there's a Marriott in every corner, everywhere. But what the planners and what people want to know is the awareness about Walnut Creek as a destination and why they should book in Walnut Creek. And I think we're kind of that top level view. We can see the trends, we can see what's going on top level, and then when we funnel down the leads to them, they can close. So I think they appreciate that relationship.
In the early days, I'm not sure they understood that you weren't just an advertising arm for 5 different hotels, or now 7.
Right.
That you were basically marketing the destination, which meant marketing the restaurants, marketing the arts, marketing the outdoor
100%
activities.
right.
A reason for people to come, and then they'll find the hotel.
Absolutely, absolutely.
A second question, you used the term procured, but not the way we were using it earlier in the meeting, which was a procurement process.
Right.
What is a procured tour?
So we work with tour operators that actually have a client base, and they find out what it is they're looking for their tours, and they go through and they find the destinations and everything for them to do, and they set it up for them specifically.
So is it also another term for it is curated?
Correct.
Okay, I was trying to, thank you. And then I have a question about the budget. Thank you for sending the additional numbers.
Yes.
You're running at a loss projected for this coming year. I
That's
knew
when
I
Bob's
could get you
gonna
out of the
stand up.
chair.
Yeah, it's actually an investment. If you look at the fund balance, there's a considerable balance as a result of collecting the TOT, or I should say the assessment, and not being able to perform. So we do have an excess fund balance. So we
So what the income
we want to
statement is
invest the
really
money.
showing is a spending of the reserved assets for this year.
Yeah, the fund balance, basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
When I printed it, it requires a microscope to
Yeah.
read it, and I
Well-
forgot to bring it with me.
Yeah. We printed on 11 by 17 because I can't see.
I need it on a flip chart.
Yeah. You know, if I can acknowledge the staff, the main reason for a lot of these changes in format was we were using an old format, and they wanted to make sure that the city's share was deducted from the amount of the assessment rather than
It's a
being an
net-
expense.
Net revenue amount.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Yep.
Just a quick question. So are you, as we come out of COVID, are the hoteliers feeling like they're getting back to normal, or is it?
They do feel like they're getting back to normal. The business segments have changed, so the markets have changed. So, for example, you know, business travel used to be a lot more. It is decreased. It's slowly coming back, but it's nowhere near what it was. Business travel was a lot of our properties' bread and butter, but now they're just, you know, they're having to think differently. We got a lot of leisure during COVID. We're still getting leisure. The weekends are doing great, so it depends on which hotel you talk to. And sports are great for us and continue to be. And then in the select service properties, they do really well with traveling nurses for the long-term stays. So yeah, we're back. It's
a different world.
Has changed. Yeah,
It's a different world.
Yeah, exactly.
And then are we benefiting from, you know, you talked about how people felt safe here. Are we benefiting from the contrast to other cities that are bigger destinations around us?
Yes, we are. We are. And we are actually going, I won't say going after, I will say we're reaching out to those market segments that typically would have booked in those larger cities, and we're reaching out to them and offering them Walnut Creek as an alternative.
Okay. Thank you guys very much. And thanks for, I love your enthusiasm for your job.
It's a fun job. Yeah. I mean, Walnut Creek's not hard to sell.
Okay. Thank you.
Matt, do you have anything you want to?
I don't. I just want to thank Nicole and Bob for all their hard work.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
I have a question, and it came up when we were at the cancer facility at John Muir's Hospital, and it was that they were concerned about places for people to stay and eat because they expected that their constellation of people under treatment, if they have to be there overnight or for several days, would have a place to stay. Have you talked to them at all? That's the first part of the question. And the second part of the question is, are you nervous that we have enough hotel rooms?
I could always use more hotel rooms. We haven't talked to them specifically about that. I have been in the loop very much so with Bob, and the chamber keeps us abreast of everything that's happening. Have we broached that subject specifically yet? No. But that is definitely something that we can work with them going forward. Medical tourism is a thing, unfortunately. But yeah, that is definitely something we can work with them going forward. It is actually in our strategic plan.
And we have CoLab now, too.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning CoLab, but specifically relating to John Muir. The YVR corridor has been talked about relative to maybe repurposing location for a potential hotel. We know that there's some discussion about Shadelands as well. One thing that happens is people come a distance for medical, and places to stay are absolutely essential. So we're having some conversations with our healthcare industry, not only on the availability of talent, but also the issue that you bring up, Mayor. It's a real issue for us.
Thank you. Thank you for staying in touch with everyone. Okay, I guess I have more questions.
We have a new hotel coming online. When is that slated, and when would you put it in the book?
Yeah, I have heard fall of this year. That's what I've heard. Hilton Garden Inn, you're referring to? Yes. I have heard fall.
I'll get an update Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Last chance, going. All right, thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome. And I just want to call out that I have some giveaways, of course. This is a nice koozie picnic tote, and you can carry it as a tote or a backpack. You can put hot or cold things in there, and there's lovely pockets on the side, and each one of you will get one.
Super.
Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right.
Mayor, if I may, one item. Councilmember Silva, thank you for telling us the unfortunate news about Charlie. I would suggest you adjourn the meeting in his honor tonight. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Council. For tonight, the recommended actions are, 1, to adopt the resolution approving the TBID annual assessment report for fiscal year 2023-2024, and that includes the revised fiscal year program budget. And then 2, to adopt the resolution of intention to levy the assessment for the upcoming fiscal year 24-25 and set a public hearing for June 18th.
Comments, questions, motion? Oh, public comment, yeah, silly me. Well, it actually turned out to be nobody. So, we checked on the Zoom.
No hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, all righty. Now, do we have motions or other activities?
Just have one question for the attorney. Can we do this as, do we have to do 2 separate motions, or can we do it as one?
You can do it as one motion.
All right. I move to adopt the resolution approving the Walnut Creek Tourism Business Improvement District Annual Assessment Report for fiscal year 2023-2024, and to adopt a resolution of intent to levy assessments for fiscal year 2024-25 for the TBID and set a public hearing for our next meeting, which is June 18th, 2024.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And thank you for the presentation, and thank you for the good news. Are we okay?
5-minute break?
Yeah. We're going to have a leg stretching break, so 5 minutes. We'll see you all back here.
Better to be ready than not.
item on the Tuesday, June 4th, 2024 agenda meeting, and it is two items. They're both public hearings. One is to waive reading and introduce an ordinance making zoning amendments to update the city's density bonus ordinance to comply with state law. And I am proud to present Aaron Sage, who will be doing this. And Aaron, welcome. This is your first presentation before this council. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to be here as well. Good evening, Mayor Haskew, Mayor Pro Tem Darling, and members of the City Council. Aaron Sage, Principal Planner with the Community Development Department. As a quick aside, if you'll permit me, I worked with Charlie Abrams about 20 years ago on one of my first projects with the City of Berkeley, and he was a pleasure to work with. So very sad to hear of his passing.
I didn't know Berkeley hired 12-year-olds.
I'm older than I look, apparently. So one of the items in my portfolio here in CDD is implementation of our housing element, which, as you all know, was adopted last October. And so tonight are two of the first items in the bucket list of to-dos from the housing element. So without further ado, let me jump into the first one. This one relates to updating our density bonus ordinance update. Get my clicker here. So let me just start with a little bit of background, much of which you may already be familiar with. State density bonus law currently requires local governments to grant additional residential density beyond what would otherwise be permitted by the local government's zoning ordinance. It also requires additional benefits and flexibility known as concessions or incentives, reduced parking ratios, as well as waiver or reduction of any development standards that would get in the way of achieving the density that an applicant is entitled to under state law. It also requires local agencies to adopt an ordinance to implement the provisions of state law. And that's what the city did in 2009. And that is it has not been updated since that time. However, I want to point out that one unique thing about our local ordinance is that it includes a provision to go beyond the density that's permitted under state law through a conditional use permit process. State law has been amended several times since 2009, and there's a summary of some of the major changes in your packet. But this does present a challenge for not just Walnut Creek, many other cities, in keeping up with the state legislature and updating that local ordinance every time it's updated at the state. Sometimes in one legislative session, there could be 4 or 5 bills all amending state law. So the purpose of this item is to bring our local ordinance up to speed with state law. There was a previous attempt, as detailed in the staff report, by city staff to do this. That was in 2018 with a study session at the Planning Commission, and then a study session before you in 2019. And generally, there was support for additional flexibility. Many of the things that were brought forward during that previous effort are included tonight by way of removing some of the specific boundaries that were previously in our ordinance. And also by making the CUP provision that I mentioned more open-ended. So going back to the housing element, the specific language there is that we've committed to amend the density bonus ordinance to ensure compliance with current state law and maintain the existing provision for density bonus benefits that exceed state requirements. That's that CUP provision that I mentioned. This item is due by June 30th. And as you probably all know, under state law, we have to make timely progress toward implementation of our housing element if we are to maintain the state's certification of the housing element. So this slide just highlights some of the major amendments in the package from the current ordinance. Removing affordability and bonus percentages that are already specified in state law to avoid redundancy and also to avoid having to go back and amend specific provisions that are often amended by the state on a frequent basis. That also applies to the number of incentives or concessions and the parking ratios. That change alone is reducing the length of the ordinance by almost half. It's going from about 13 pages to about 7 pages, which will make it a lot easier for applicants and staff to understand and administer. We're revising the CUP supplemental bonus provision to remove specific affordability requirements to qualify for that provision. A lot of the comments we received in 2018 and 2019 really said, well, what about this option? What about that option? Can we be more flexible? And so by basically just saying, if an applicant wants to do anything that is not otherwise permitted under state law, or that goes beyond what is mandated by state law, I should say, that can be done through a CUP process. Deleting the provision that inclusionary units do not qualify for density bonus, which conflicts with state law and case law. Deleting the requirement to show quote-unquote economic feasibility for waivers or reductions of development standards. Also, again, that's in conflict with state law. And revising requirements for affordable units to be, quote, dispersed evenly and compatible with the design and appearance of the overall project. And we've replaced those requirements with objective standards, which, as you know, is now required by state law. So the Planning Commission recommendation was very straightforward. They recommended adoption of the proposed ordinance, and they had no further changes to forward to you. So our recommendation is here on the slide, but basically to introduce the proposed ordinance, make the CEQA exemption that's noted there. I'll also point out that an errata sheet has been distributed. We would ask that that be included in your motion tonight. I only included a portion of that errata sheet on the slide because the slide deck was due much earlier in the day, and we discovered some additional changes that need to be made. So with that, I will be happy to take any questions you might have.
Looking for questions. Yeah, Kevin, please.
Thank you very much. So just so I understand, is this something that is now being required by the state for, because we're certified in the housing element, this is to retain that certification?
Essentially, along with all the other housing element programs, we have to, as I said, implement the programs that we've committed to in the housing element. And if we fail to do that, then the state will begin a process which could culminate in decertification. There would be several steps that we would have to go through to get to that point, but we want to steer completely clear of any sort of enforcement inquiries or action by the state, if at all possible.
So these are part of the promises, the commitments that we had made when we presented our housing element for certification and were approved?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Just one quick question, and welcome to Walnut Creek. So on the CUP process, I don't recall it being used very often when it comes to this. Do we know how often it's been used?
I don't have that information
Okay.
right just handy. I'd have to get back to you on that.
And so
My recollection, Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem, is I don't actually recall it being used yet at least during my tenure with Walnut Creek.
yeah, I
Council members do.
I was thinking back, and it's like, wow.
It's also that the state law has changed pretty dramatically to allow greater density bonuses, and so it in some ways, when Walnut Creek first adopted it, there was a greater potential need for it. It's probably more likely to be raised now on a project that either does not have enough affordable units to do it, or alternatively is less than a 5-unit development.
So as I understand it, so if somebody comes in and they don't have enough affordable units to really take advantage of the current state density bonus law, they can come in and propose under a CUP process something that gives them some flexibility.
That's
even
correct.
though they wouldn't have earned that under state density bonus.
That's correct, and the ordinance talks about kind of a proportional benefit too. So if they're 4/5 of their way to meeting the required elements, we may give them 4/5 of the bonus.
And that would be a discretionary process that would go through to the Planning Commission. And,
Correct.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Anything else? Cindy? Other? Cindy?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation and for all of the work on both this and the next item that you're going to do. I did have some questions that I sent to staff yesterday, and I think some of them are worth elaborating on here, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So we just had the second reading of the objective design standards earlier, so those would be applicable when you referenced the objective standards.
Yes.
And that meets state law. Now, state density bonus law has been in effect since the mid-1970s, right?
Correct.
So we have always been compliant with state law. This is bringing these into alignment with each other.
As the council recall, the legislature's been very active in changing state density bonus law. So we have always complied with state law. Our ordinance has not always tracked word for word state law. For instance, some of the changes you have this evening are to remove the tables which show the percentages of it, because that's a set of objective standards that are set forth in state law, and those are what we have to comply with.
So when we set out to do this 5-6 years ago, we were not doing it because of the housing element. We were doing it because we wanted to be more aggressive and open to utilizing the tools of state density bonus law and having local density bonus standards as well.
That's correct, and some of our standards were inconsistent with how state law was written even then.
These are specific to on-site development, so someone can't pay a fee and then capitalize on the concessions by paying a fee.
Not under state density bonus law, but with the supplemental CUP provision that, in theory, could be approved by the city.
Okay. During the process that we were doing 5 or 6 years ago, we were talking to stakeholders, and a lot of the questions were about what would we need to do in order to make it more economically feasible for you to provide more affordability, greater affordability in projects. And there were 4 things that I think came up high on the list. Concessions are height restrictions, storage, parking ratios, and streamlining the process. So does the state density bonus law now address height even more clearly for us?
A relatively recent law. So for quite a long time, since I've been working with density bonus law since the mid-2000s, there's always been the provision that if a development standard, including height, prevents a project from achieving the density it's entitled to, that standard has to be waived. I think you might be getting at Measure A with your question. Okay. So I believe it was a relatively recent law that made the stipulation that when density bonus law is talking about a development standard, that specifically includes a standard that's adopted by the electorate. So I think that, if there was ever doubt about Measure A before that law was passed, that doubt has been removed.
And we've been actually
that's correct. As the council's aware, we have applied state law in the past to say that the height restrictions could be under Measure A could be modified by a density bonus project. I would offer to the council that the state law change that happened last year was really just a conforming change to make sure that there's even greater clarity in state density bonus law. But the way that state density bonus law was written before was very clear that a height standard was a development standard that could be waived.
The parking ratios have now been established by state law, particularly those near transit, such as the BART station. There are reductions in the parking ratios. So now, in many cases, developers would not need to use parking as one of their concessions, and they might be able to just take advantage of state law, and it would save a token, so to speak.
Correct. Yeah, they're more likely to not need to invoke one of their concessions on parking because the baseline state standards have been reduced. But they're if they're far enough from BART, they may still have some kind of parking requirement that they want to ask for flexibility on.
The storage, the per unit amount, the amount of square feet per unit of storage, we specify that in our design and development standards, our zoning, Are their state density bonus law standards less than that, or would that have to be addressed as a concession or a waiver?
Yeah, there's no specific, like with parking, there's no specific reduced storage standards that the state mandates. So that would have to be done through the other channels that density bonus law provides.
Actually, those are the questions that I had. Thank you for clarifying it, and it's great to have a shorter ordinance.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, and then I'll go to Matt.
Okay, and I just had a quick question. One of the commenters raised the issue of whether or not it's appropriate for us to be more lenient than state density bonus law. In what ways? I mean, is it just our CUP process that allows the greater flexibility?
Yeah, I read that email, and that was my understanding of what the commenter was referring to.
So the idea that this discretionary process that we retain control over is somehow what he's likely referring to.
That was my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know, my thought when reading that email was just that we've made the commitment in our housing element that we're going to retain that provision. So from the state's perspective, even though from the state's perspective, at this point, we don't have the flexibility to just get rid of that provision.
Yeah, and in all likelihood, it sounds like there's enough flexibility in current state density bonus law that it would be a very special circumstance that we would get to the CUP.
Yes, that's a very good point. There's so much. The state has moved the needle so far in terms of how high you can go now without even have to go to that CUP provision that, you know, in my opinion, it makes it much less likely that that would be needed, at least for typical types of projects.
It would be an oddball project,
Yeah.
you know, something that didn't quite, like 4 units, and you don't quite have enough affordable housing because it's only 4 units kind of thing.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Matt?
So I wanted to ask another question about the oddball project. And thank you for the presentation. It was very good. On the CUP process, I know historically, you know, the ordinance had referenced the 35% density bonus, which is now 50 or 100%, depending. So we're amending the ordinance to allow a CUP for projects that may not otherwise qualify for the density bonus law, one.
God's backyard and et cetera. What the difference is between SB4 and what this would do, and I know we're going beyond state law with this.
Mm-hmm.
So is this ministerial? Is it by right? Can you, you know, I should have probably suggested a table that says this versus this. But
Right.
Can you do it off the top of your head?
I think I can hit the major points.
Great, thank you.
So both SB4 and this ordinance would allow by right approval. So that's one thing that's the same, but it starts to diverge after that. SB4 is geared toward multi-unit developments, and they have to be deed restricted affordable units, or they have to at least have a certain percentage of deed restricted affordable units. So that gets you into deed restrictions, qualifying the renter or the homeowner, and monitoring through the city. We have to do some kind of monitoring, and you know that's a whole different kind of ball game from just an ADU that doesn't have those restrictions on it.
And this affordability in the ADU is really by design because it's smaller and therefore it's probably more affordable.
Correct.
What about what is the approval process for SB4 versus this?
At this point, I could tell you that it's a by right approval process, but beyond that, you know, there might be certain, you know, procedural requirements within SB4 that I'd have to take a quick look. I did print out the bill and have it with me tonight, but I'd have to dig a little deeper to answer that question.
Zoning administrator?
So I'm thinking that, you know, in terms of these things, there's a lot more site preparation, there's a lot more involved with it. And then with the ADU, or with accessory dwelling units, they're easier to get in place. And the restrictions and the requirements aren't nearly as stringent, just structurally in terms of building them also.
But in terms of entitlement, it won't have to go through the Planning Commission or City Council unless there's something.
For this particular ordinance, that's correct.
Okay. My other one is related to architectural standards, and I understand what you're proposing. I just disagree with it, so I will wait till comments.
All right, are there any more questions on site here? I'm not see,
One quick question.
Okay.
And I didn't see this on here. I apologize if I missed it somewhere. But do they have to be single story or?
Generally, yes. I mean, there's a 16-foot height limit in most cases. It's going to be really difficult to try to squeeze 2 stories into that height limit. Yeah.
Thanks.
Matt, do you have anything? No, okay. So, public comment. Yet again, I'm looking at the hordes that are sitting here, and they're smiling. And so we're going to move back to here. And you want to get your comment over with, Councilmember Silva?
Madam Mayor, if I can, Ms. Martinez, is there anyone on Zoom?
Oh, thank you.
There are no hands raised on Zoom.
Thank you.
So I have 2 comments, and we'll see what my colleagues say. I understand that we only said that we would do 1 per site. And but I also think that the likelihood of them happening is less the more constrained the number, because there is a lot of infrastructure investment that has to be done on these sites, and these are larger spaces, and the likelihood of the corner of the parcel where they would want to have one having sanitary district, power, and other infrastructure already in place. It's a long pull for all of those utilities, and that's different than a single-family home where I might, only have to go 6 feet. So I thought we might want to consider, I appreciated what the Planning Commission said, and I thought we might want to consider going more, even if it was only 2 per site. I am concerned, actually 3 concerns. My second concern is that I think we should restrict this, define it so it is the organization that is doing this owns the property. One of the sites that was on the map is actually a tenant in the Palos Verdes shopping center. Now, the shopping center isn't likely to allow them to do it, but I think we just have some confusion there. The other thing is, so I think we should, if there's some language we could put in that would make it clear that it's not random, so to speak. And then an architectural consistency. What we're doing is basically the language that's proposed here is the language that's used in the single-family ADUs, and what that makes sense that you would have architectural consistency with a single-family home, same type of exterior, same type of windows, same roofing line. And then I start to think about the various faith-based buildings, the main buildings. Don't look like homes. They don't look like cottages. They look more like commercial buildings with narrow windows, et cetera. And perhaps we can come up with objective design standards that would allow a cottage to appear at the back of the property as opposed to what might look like a storage unit inadvertently. So those are my 3 comments.
Matt, I'm going to go to you this time.
Yeah, I'm in general agreement with Councilmember Silva's comments. I do think it makes sense to require that it's the owner that is applying for the ADU as opposed to a tenant. That caught my eye too in terms of the architectural compatibility, and I think there we're really going for residential as opposed to, and I agree with you that those are large commercial buildings essentially, and you don't really necessarily want them to be, you don't want them to stick out. You want them to be compatible with the site, but I don't think we necessarily want them to match the faith-based building structure. And then in terms of the number, I'm not sure, I didn't watch the Planning Commission. I'm not sure if they specified a particular number. I don't think we committed to a specific number. As long as there's not any CEQA implications with saying, 2 per site, then I would be okay with that. Those are my comments.
Any more here? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, on the number per site, there's a balance there. You know, when we looked at Hope Village, because it was supportive housing, you could have all the services there needed to make the neighbors feel comfortable with what was going on there. If we start getting up to 3 or 4 that are just ADUs, I'm not willing, I don't think that's a smart move, but I could go to 2. I think I would be comfortable with 2. I would like to make sure that it is the property owner that is pursuing the development. And on the architectural compatibility, I could go with, it doesn't have to be compatible, but could coordinate or something, you know, I don't know. There's a way to.
So maybe staff would have a suggestion about, because this would be ministerial, how would we, you know, I was thinking, okay, if these are mostly in residential neighborhoods, then it needs to be compatible with the residential neighborhood, not chartreuse and whatever.
Aaron, can you bring up so staff has some potential language to address at least 2 of these issues. And if the council wants to change it from 1 to 2 units, Aaron, do we have that language ready?
Yes.
On your slides too, as well?
Yeah, we don't have a change to the number, but that's a really straightforward change that could just be, I assume, read into the record.
Correct.
Yeah. But the other issues, I think we've made an attempt to address those issues at least, and we have some language that we can share with you.
Okay.
So, so this slide addresses concerns about property ownership. So the way that we proposed to address that is before we had, well, I should say in the current draft that was in your packet, there's just a large paragraph with a lot of provisions in it. And we didn't want to just make that paragraph even longer, so we broke it into
to the paragraph and
paragraph 1, which would deal with single-family or multifamily dwellings. That first sentence actually should be highlighted as new text, where it says lots with a single-family or multiple-family dwelling. And then we have a new section 2. Again, lots with a religious assembly use. That should be highlighted as well. I should have mentioned the yellow is what's new as of. That was not in your packet.
Okay.
And red is what was already proposed. So what we would add is following requirements. A, lot is owned entirely by the entity that operates the on-site religious assembly use. That should address the ownership issue. And then B is intended to address a scenario where perhaps a religious assembly entity purchases a shopping center or purchases a parcel in a shopping center, which is not inconceivable that something like that might happen. So we wanted to address that as well. So B says that the lot has to be located in a zoning district that permits religious assembly uses. That's already in the ordinance. And single-family residential uses, so that the requirement for single-family residential uses to be allowed, that'll rule out, I think, commercial zones, or at least other than that will, I think that will address that issue. And then we also have some language about planned development permits as well. I can pause and see if there's any questions about this language.
So where would the up to 2 units go? In this same place?
Not more than.
In the first paragraph where it says not more than 1, you would change that to 2.
More than.
In the second paragraph.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Second
Yes.
paragraph.
Yes.
Section 2.
That's right.
We don't have to find it in other places.
That's right.
And then this would take care of where you've got a non-conforming use. A religious assembly in a non-conforming area would not be able to have the ADU.
Right, because we still have the language about the zone has to permit religious assembly uses. That's right.
So just a question then, like applying this to St. Mary's Church on Mount Diablo, 2B, the lot is located in a zoning district that permits religious assembly uses and single family or subject to a PD permit. I don't think that church would qualify for either of those.
Yeah, I'm consulting my my table here, because I have all the zones for all the different churches here, I should say, for all the religious assembly uses. So St. Mary's is in the MUD and MUC. And
It's mixed use, right?
if you'll just bear with me, I'm just going to verify if those zones allow single family.
But are we allowed to restrict it to single family since state law says you can have ADUs on multifamily?
Well, keep in mind that this entire provision is something that the city agreed to as part of the housing element, but it's not a requirement of state law.
Okay.
So you can draft what you believe is appropriate here.
Until the state decides they like what we did.
Correct.
And then just
That's next year's problem.
Apologize for the delay here. Okay, MUD does not permit single-family residential, and
I think we end up with the problem at St. Paul's Episcopal and Walnut Creek Pres as well.
MUC also does not permit single-family residential. So that is one example of an existing religious assembly use that would not qualify under this language. There's 7 out of the 35 would also not qualify based on this language. But I think that's a trade-off the council will have to consider. If the goal is to protect commercial areas from having ADUs come in, that's going to be a trade-off the council will have to weigh.
Could we address that by saying multifamily instead of single family? We're still restricting it to 2. I mean, it seems like, I don't know, 7 out of 35 seems like a lot to exclude if we're.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think what we've done is inadvertently, this not only takes out St. Mary's Church on Mount Diablo, but it takes out Walnut Creek Presbyterian Church and St. Paul's because they have some kind of high-density land use designation.
That's true. So with your suggestion, Councilmember Francois, the issue there would be that multifamily is allowed in virtually all of our commercial districts, including the example that Councilmember Silva gave of the Palos Verdes Shopping Center in the community commercial district. That's a zone that allows multifamily. So the owner of that shopping center, under today's zoning, could come in and say, I'd like to build, some multifamily on this site and make this into a mixed-use shopping center. And that's one of the reasons why we thought that perhaps it would be, not inappropriate to allow ADUs. But if we think ADUs, are inappropriate, then this is one way that would prevent it in those types of locations.
I think that that explanation makes sense to me, that if the existing zoning on Palos Verdes Mall already allows apartments and multifamily, then certainly we should allow the ability for 2 ADUs. To me, that's less intense than what's already allowed by the zoning.
I would agree.
But Cindy, were we trying to solve for, what was the example you gave of was it a church like at Los Lomas or in a school or something like that? Is that why the qualifier for single family is there?
I was just getting a little concerned that tenants were going to start.
Yeah.
And then the tenant leaves and you've got 2 ADUs on a commercial property. Maybe it's not so bad. But I also noticed that on Buena Vista Avenue, the 5 faith-based between San Luis Road and south to the freeway are also in multifamily low. So I think we need to be really cautious that we're defeating the purpose, which is, I think, the mission of the faith-based communities. They may find this a good opportunity for them.
The council could, for purpose and recognizing we can always come back and change it as we get more information, the council could strike B, and that would still address the concern that Councilmember Silva raised. Because as we're seeing in this conversation, trying to wordsmith be too much is creating its own set of issues.
But I think it would make sense to retain the part about the lot located in a zoning district that permits religious assembly uses.
Which is what the map said anyway.
Well, if I could on the map just was intended to show all of the existing uses and not to remove any based on what their zoning was.
There were some non-conforming use, right, the business park one, for example.
Right.
If I may, I think also, I don't have an objection to keeping the first part of 2 up to assembly uses, but I think that is somewhat implicit in the introduction to section 2, because the only time that might not be the situation is if you happen to have a religious facility that's a non-conforming use. That would be the only time that adding that language or keeping that language in B would take it out of the possibility of of being able to putting ADUs on there.
Yeah, I thought there was something that Cindy had found where it was a non-conforming. Oops, I had it on, I turned it off. Somewhere where we had a non-conforming, a religious assembly on a non-conforming use. Am I just hallucinating at this point?
Well, there seems to be one in the business park.
Yeah, I guess that was the one that
It's on Wiggett.
Well, if you do keep the first, on B, if you kept the lot is located in a zoning district that permits religious assembly uses, period, then you are addressing that issue.
I would like to keep that first part of the sentence in B.
That makes sense.
So how do we address the architectural consistency so we don't have a lot of CUPs coming through because they really don't want 2 cottages at the back of the property looking like storage lockers?
I have some language to propose for that issue. But before I do that, there was another item that Councilmember Silva raised in her questions regarding a property that had 2 churches on it. North Creek Church has some kind of relationship with a Persian church that utilizes the same.
But it's still only one property owner.
That's right. That's right.
They're renting it on Fridays.
Right. And I think it seemed that you maybe wanted clarification that.
No, I just wanted everybody to know that second church doesn't count any more than the church at Las Lomas High School or the one in Civic Park.
Okay. Okay, great. Then we can just skip over this slide.
Okay.
So relating to design, again, what we would propose is to break the design paragraph, what we have now, into 2 different paragraphs, one to deal with single-family or multifamily dwellings. And so we would strike the language about religious assembly uses here, but otherwise this paragraph would stay as is. And then we'd create this new section here. So in thinking about this, before I read through it, staff felt that there was some value in when you have an attached ADU that is an addition to a religious assembly building, that there would be some value in trying to achieve some kind of consistency with the architecture of that addition to the main building. Because otherwise, it might look sort of like, the best word I can come up with is Frankenstein, where there's just something that doesn't relate at all, but we did add some language. So what we did in paragraph 2A is we referenced back to the provisions for single-family or multifamily dwellings, but we added some language to loosen it a little bit. We added the word predominant. So it now says the predominant building form, roof, and window placement type of the main building. We don't have that word predominant, so it kind of makes it a little bit hard to administer. But with this, I think it gives a little more leeway to staff. And then we specifically exclude minarets, spires, and other architectural, sorry, there's a typo there. It should say architectural features that extend from the main roof so that we don't get, minarets and things like that popping off the ADU's roof. And then we have a specific provision for stained glass windows, if that's a concern, that doesn't need to be replicated on the ADU. And then 2B deals with detached ADUs separately. The proposal here is to just reference to the recently adopted design review standards and guidelines for single-family dwellings, but with a clause that they need to utilize the same colors for the exterior siding and trim as the predominant colors based on square footage for objectivity, of the main building, so that we don't get a beige, church building and a chartreuse, ADU building. We thought that that was kind of like a bare minimum, compatibility standard that we should have. So happy to take any questions or suggestions that you might have on this.
I like it.
I'd love to ask a couple of architects, but I think it does the job.
And as the city attorney mentioned, we can certainly come back and improve upon this language after we've implemented it and seen if there's any kinks to work
The most
out.
important thing is for us to remember that these are to be lived in, and churches and faith-based buildings are to be visited and to be focused. They have a different purpose. And so I think we need to be hopefully cognizant of that when we look at them. Will they be allowed to, the second question, will they be allowed to use the templates and the designs that we've developed for ADUs?
Absolutely.
So maybe we should make a reference or use one of the prescribed ones and be done. Sorry.
I just want to make sure that whatever the people who really dive deeply into this stuff are happy with, I want to make sure that we still have the same kind of opportunities like we did at Grace Presbyterian Church, because that is ideal with not only just the group of people who will be a community unto themselves, but who have other services available on site so that they can aspire to move to more standard housing. Or I just want to make sure that we haven't overcomplicated this. So that's.
Yeah, I was kind of assuming, I was looking at this thinking, what are these going to be for? And I was thinking, it probably won't make sense for a church to do this. If they're going for something like we're doing at Grace Presbyterian, they're going to come in under one of the other provisions. This is going to be a way for a faith-based organization that is having a hard time getting their preschool teacher that can live in town.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see several churches that have those kind of needs just deciding, well, okay, let's build something on site. And then
It's not that they're very low income, it's they are in need of a more affordable
a workable place for some of their staff or
workforce housing.
Yeah. So it's not people necessarily people transitioning out of homelessness. It wouldn't necessarily be a good match for that because it's only 1 or 2 units. Doesn't have the services they would require, but it's for people that just need a place to live in a city without very many of those.
That's the case. I'm very comfortable with this.
So, should I try this? I will move to waive reading and introduce an ordinance making CEQA exemption findings under Section 15061B3 of the CEQA guidelines and amending Title 10 Planning and Zoning of the Walnut Creek Municipal Code to allow up to 2 accessory dwelling units, or I won't try to amend the language, to allow accessory dwelling units on properties with religious assembly uses with the changes we've discussed here.
Yeah, to be clear, since we're introducing the ordinance, it would include the changes you're seeing on the screen right now with no further modification to those. Aaron, if you could go to the other slide that has the number of units. And it would be what you're seeing on the screen now, except in the first line of 2.
I would say
you would
one.
sway not more than 2 accessory dwelling units. Aaron, that's the only place I saw
And the
ordinance. Is that?
subsection B,
That's
the
right.
lot is located in a zoning district that permits religious assembly uses, period.
Period, and the rest
Strike
of
the
that
rest of
language
that.
be struck.
Yeah.
Second.
That's right.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Darling.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilk.
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. At this moment, we are going to go back into closed session, and we will reconvene at the second floor conference room regarding a conference for labor negotiations. And Yes, we'll see you there.